All right, folks. We have one thing left to learn, and that is how to solve. So we're going to be solving quadratic equations. Now, from your work last week, you all know that a quadratic equation has to look a certain way. And it has to look like this. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So there's got to be a squared term, a regular term, and then a constant term out here on the end. Now, you are going to learn two methods for solving these quadratic equations. The first method is solving by factoring. So that's why on Tuesday I had you review how to do guess and check, because you're going to need to remember that. And then the second method that we'll learn is called the quadratic formula. Now, factoring we are going to work on today and tomorrow, so Thursday and Friday, and then quadratic formula we will do Monday and Tuesday, and then that will complete the semester. The end of the first semester is next Wednesday, January 20th. So continue working on your missing and incomplete assignments if you have any. I think I had given you a due date of the 18th for those. I am going to move that due date up to the 20th, since the 20th is our last day. If you have any questions or need any help with that, please let me know. All right, so let's get into solving quadratic equations. And like I said today, we are going to solve by factoring. Now, what I'm going to do is put the steps up here first, and then do some examples with you to show you how this works. All right, when you're solving a quadratic equation by factoring, the first thing that you want to do is make sure the equation looks like ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So I want you to notice here that if you're going to solve a quadratic equation, the first thing that you've got to do is make sure that it equals 0. Okay? And then the second thing that I want you to notice is that the terms need to be in a specific order. Ax squared has to be first, bx has to be second, and c has to be third. So it's got to look exactly like this in order for you to be able to solve it. So it's got to be equal to 0, and then it's got to have ax squared first, bx second, and c third. If it doesn't, so make sure it looks like that, and if it doesn't, we're going to fix it. And fixing it will be easy. You already know how to do it. You already have the skills to do that. So first we're going to make sure the equation looks the way we want it to. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. All right, now the second thing that you're going to do is once it looks the way you want it to, you are going to factor. And on these problems, when you factor, you are going to use that guess and check method that we learned for trinomials. All right, and then your third and final step is to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve for x. So these are the 3 steps you're going to do. You're going to make sure the equation looks the way you want it to. You want ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And if it doesn't look like that, then you're going to make it look like that. Then you're going to use guess and check to do your factoring. And then each of the factors that you get will be set equal to 0, and you will solve for x. All right, so let's look at some examples. The first one we're going to do is x squared minus 10x plus 21 is equal to 0. All right, now the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that this thing looks the way I want it to look. Remember, I want ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Well, the first thing I see is that this equation is equal to 0. So it has what I want there. And then I need to check these terms. Is ax squared first? Yes, there's 1x squared. Then bx minus 10x, and then plus 21. So this equation looks exactly the way I want it to look. It's equal to 0, and these terms over here are in the order that they're supposed to be in. So step 1 is done. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor. Now this is my guess and check. Now remember, when we guess and check, there are going to be 2 sets of parentheses. And the first thing we do is we guess for the x squared. The only way to get an x squared is an x times an x. So that makes this nice and easy. We put an x in each set of our parentheses. Now we come down here to the other end and we guess for this positive 21. So how can I get 21? Well, I can do 1 times 21. I can do 3 times 7. And those are the only combinations that I have. Now, remember here that we have to stop and think about signs. Notice that your problem has a negative in it. So that means that at least one of the numbers over here in these combinations is going to have to be a negative. So you've got a positive 21. Remember that if you do a positive times a positive, you get a positive. If you do a negative times a negative, you get a positive. And if you do a positive times a negative, you get a negative. So on this particular problem, I'm going to need that negative times negative combination, because I want the 21 to turn out to be positive. So both numbers will have to be negative. Now, remember here that we can kind of use the numbers in the problem in this case to help us kind of figure out what to use. Because we want negative 10 in the middle, that negative 3 times negative 7 combination ought to kind of stand out to us. So here is our guess. I think that this thing is going to factor as x minus 3 times x minus 7. Now, I need to check that though. So I'm going to do my check step right here. X times x we know is x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 7 is a positive 21. When I combine the like terms, negative 7x minus 3x is negative 10x. So I get x squared minus 10x plus, oh shoot, I left out my plus sign, plus 21. So this checks. That is correct. All right, so let me carry this down here so we can see what we're doing. So we now know that x minus 3 times x minus 7 equals 0 is the correct way to factor this, because we've guessed and we've checked, and it worked out. So there's step 2 done. So remember what we did here. First we made sure it looked the way we wanted it to. We had ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So it looked exactly the way we wanted it to. So we did our guess and check to factor. And here's where we've ended up. All right, now we're at that step 3 where it says to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Your first factor is x minus 3. So you're going to set x minus 3 equal to 0. Your second factor is x minus 7. So you're going to set x minus 7 equal to 0. And then you're going to solve each of those equations for x. So on this first one, to solve for x, all we have to do is add 3 to both sides. And we get x equals 3. And on our second one, all we have to do to solve for x is add 7 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 7. So our solution for this quadratic equation